thinking about like the slide that you have up, Cody, it's an interesting one, right? Because when we think about what we try to do to drive a recruiting culture, with my team in the organization, and look, this is the thing: every organization at Microsoft does not have a recruiting culture, right? Meaning that it is still a work in progress. My team does a great job driving it with the marketing organization, the US sales organization, and in some other areas that we actually focus on, like HR and so on. However, that's not to say it's not done in everywhere else. There's still things that we do, and so we leverage talent scouting. We leverage external succession planning and our active sourcing on search work, right? So that would be more of the reactive stuff that comes up. And we try to make that less reactive by doing the work of talent scouting and having our leaders engage in talent scouting and succession planning a lot earlier in the process before we even know we have a role.
Yeah, and I know that you've got a big recruiting team there at Microsoft, and every person's work is certainly going to be valuable. What's really powerful is how you've taken this talent scouting effort and really created a process and some procedures and some steps and just some engagement that helps get people to the table before you ever have the open opportunity.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's dive into it. So what is talent scouting? And basically it's proactive. It's a proactive approach to recruiting. It is not about recruiting for a role. It's about engaging talent. At the end of the day, that's what it is. It's about proactively engaging talent. And what I like to call it, because we focus talent scouting primarily on diversity, but it can be used all across. And we're always keeping an eye out for great talent. But it's a long-term approach. And what that means is these engagements can be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, sometimes 4 years or more, to where we are courting a candidate, facilitating the building of a relationship with one of our leaders. And then eventually, when the position opens up, we actually have a slate that's ready to go. Because we actually talked to a lot of talent along this time frame. The leader is meeting with several prospects a year, multiple times over dinner, when they're traveling, whatever it may be, just conversations, you name it. They're doing this. And this is something that we facilitate. So it really helps us think about, how do we manage our long-term pipelines, right? So everybody has a huge talent pool, right? But really at the end of the day, your business wants to know, what does the pipeline look like for my sales leaders? What does the pipeline look like for this? And being able to have that question and understand truly what it looks like and how you measure it, that's what talent scouting allows us to do. As we get into this, we actually have stages that we use to measure talent scouting and what it actually is. And so we'll talk about those a little bit more. Great. So these are kind of like the commitments from each area. When we think about like our stakeholders, we basically have them meeting with people, 1 to 2 times a month, and that's the commitment. And so as you can see, you have several candidates going through this with multiple leaders. You actually get to know a lot of talent out there. So we facilitate these get to know conversations. And if you think about this time during the pandemic, a lot of teams are trying to figure out, what do I do right now because my rec load has stopped? We're on a hiring freeze. How can I continue to keep the wheels churning in order to make sure that we're not behind when it's time to hire again? Talent scouting is a great process for that. So we're talking about engaging talent proactively, getting them in front of the leaders, making sure that your leaders are actually prepped. They understand how to hold a conversation without talking about a specific role. They understand how to actually start building relationship and leaving it open for the next engagement, right? And creating action steps about what should happen next with this person, and taking a look broadly across the organization to understand exactly where this person could potentially fit. within the organization so we can identify the appropriate next steps. The key is not just to have them meet with one leader, because everybody knows that leader could attrit, and the next thing you know, you're starting from scratch again, right? So the goal, how we move people through the engagement stages, which we'll talk about in the next slide, but it's discover, know, like, trust. Our goal is to get everybody to trust. So the more people we have them meet with, the more they trust us, want to be at Microsoft, the more people will trust them and want them to be at Microsoft. So that's the goal, to get everyone to that stage.
One of the things that came up is, how do you get the leaders to be involved in, even in this whole recruiting effort, right? We talked about it has to be leader led. How do you take someone who's got a really busy schedule and get them to commit to doing this?
Hey, that's a great question, and that's probably the one of the toughest things to do. Um, when we think about how to make that happen, it's really about showing the value prop of why they should be doing this, right? Um, so for instance, we have what we call a leader walking deck. On that leader walking deck, we go into a business with a leader. We have the HR business partner who's already on board. They understand why we're doing this. We think about the talent gaps within the organization. Those are things that we bring in the talent management for, and we try to understand those things. The other piece of it, we couple it with external succession planning. So now we think about a leader and their directs, and we say, looking at your directs and your internal succession plan, your slate is really weak here. We probably need to shore it up with external talent. In order to make that external succession plan something real that we could activate if this person did leave the company, we need to actually have conversations with these people. So we start presenting the value of actually having these discussions and why they should do it. And sometimes it can be, you don't actually have a person with this caliber of technology understanding in this new space that's developing in your organization. Maybe we should start meeting some of these people. For instance, we did that with IoT. IoT was really brand new, and it was like, gosh, who do we know in the IoT space? And this was before Microsoft was developing their IoT efforts. So we sought out all of the thought leaders in IoT, and we just started having leaders have discussions with them. And from there, we were able to, not only facilitate relationship building, but gain so much intelligence about what was going on in the market, who were the key players, and so on. So there's a lot of benefit to actually getting leaders involved in that. I mean, for one, it's like the intel that you get it's immensely valuable on its own. So I hope that answers that question. Happy to dive in more of that, but yeah, it's all about presenting the value proposition. And again, we have like a walking deck that takes a leader through everything that we want to get them on board with, and even the coaching piece of it.
And I remember us talking, and the conversation came up where you're also going to talk to those leaders in a language that they understand, right? What's going to be the impact, right? How is this going to impact the people? How is it going to impact the business? Is there an ROI on it? Those are things that are going to help them move forward. And now that I was thinking about this, I remember us having a little bit of a conversation about that. And I think that's really tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So these are the engagement stages. So discover, know, like, trust. And as you can see, each one of them kind of have a definition. Inside of our ATS system, we actually have these engagement stages set up to where when a profile actually goes into the system, they may go into the discover stage, depending on where they're at. They may be in the know. As we move them along, we're able to actually get them to like and trust. The key thing is the engagement piece, right? What kind of engagement are we actually driving? When we think about 360 reporting and the scorecard pieces of this is where I talk with my recruiting team about having certain percentages of people in know and moving that certain percentage to like, and so on to trust. On the client side, really it's about an engagement scorecard. This is where all of your leaders are, right? Being able to show them exactly how their directs are actually engaging with talent throughout the organization is huge. And it allows us to actually set some strategic goals around getting them to actually engage more with talent. And if it's top down driven, they can actually see this because the leaders actually understand the benefits because we've been doing this for many, many years. It won't happen overnight, but it's one of those things you just have to be consistently driving with the leaders.
Yes, and I know that you've evolved this over the years. What stands out for me with this is people actually engage and buy from people that they know, they like, and they trust,
Right.
and that's really really powerful. And to your point, this didn't happen overnight. Looks like you've done some great work with this. What are your thoughts on a company that they're not as big, right? They may not have the resources of a Fortune 50 company. Uh, any thoughts on, how do you do this in your small company, 100 people or 200
Yeah,
people?
you can absolutely do this in a small company. I think it's about really identifying the gaps within the organization that you're trying to fill. And again, take this situation that we're in right now with the pandemic. Many of us have were working on searches and they probably closed down, right? That doesn't mean you have to stop working on these searches. You continue to engage this talent, getting them in front of the leaders, not talking about a specific role, but really being able to start building that relationship and getting to that place to where they're trusting and you build that trust relationship with the candidates. Um, it's scalable. It doesn't require a lot of actually overhead to get this done. It just requires a commitment for talent and for great talent, right? And so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about building that recruiting culture, and it starts when it's leader led. When leaders are engaged and they understand the benefits of it, their directs will fall in line, and they begin to do this, right? And then when they believe in it and they see the results that they're getting from it, they're going to push that down and say, hey, you know what? I want everybody doing this in my organization, right? And so that's how we've been able to approach it, regardless of the size of the organization.
Well, it definitely sounds like you've got a commitment to know the talent before you ever know about the opportunity, and that can be done at any level. It doesn't have to be at the executive level. So,
Absolutely.
sounds like some great stuff here.
Yeah. And so, finally on the talent scouting thing, this is just, these are just some numbers from one of the organizations where we implemented talent scouting back in 2017. And just to show you kind of like where the diverse, and this is all diversity numbers, right? So this is just a percentage of diversities and the impact that talent scouting had on that organization. So in the first year, through the regular hiring, I think there was, there was 10% of diverse hires, but, obviously a much smaller piece came from the talent scouting. And so this is what you got to understand. So it says rec hires. Those are the reactive ones. Somebody left a job and then they opened the rec. But the talent scouting hires, they were really opportunistic because these meetings were happening. And then the leader said, wow, this is great talent. I want to create a role for this person. Right. And so this was a tech organization where they actually had the leverage to do that. We can't do that too much on the GTM side, but on this tech organization, they met with talent and over time they built relationships. And when the timing was right, whether they got headcount from finance or whatever, they created roles specifically for this talent that came into the organization. And that's one thing that when you think about a company that has a recruiting culture and a talent mindset, they are willing to secure talent in any way they can. You think about a company like Amazon and, can't stand the culture over there, but one of the things they get right is they will hire talent when they see talent. They don't have headcount caps, anything like that. They'll hire talent and they'll put them in a role, have them create something based on a white paper or something like that. But they are not shy about hiring talent, especially when it's the right thing to do for the business. And so that's what this is showing. The red is where we actually took the chance and we just hired people because they were great talent. And you can see, FY18, 44% of the talent was diverse. And as we continue on, the diversity pipelining through talent scouting got greater and greater results in terms of the diverse talent that we were bringing into the organization. And by nature, the organization is a lot more diverse as well. So yeah,
Well,
that's it on that.
well, that really underscores what you had talked about earlier when you said, focus on screening the right people in, and not necessarily screening people out.
Right.
If you weren't looking for the right people and looking for that talent and trying to get them in, you might have missed some great hires in that effort.
It happens all the time, Cody. Happens all the time.
Yeah.
I'll give you the best example is like a lot of diverse talent, especially African American talent, even Hispanic talent. They're deemed as not as technical as a lot of other talent. And I guarantee you, if you take the time to talk to them and actually screen in and get them in the right business, it's opportunity waiting to be capitalized on. And a lot of businesses just kind of overlook it.
Yeah, and
Maybe they don't have a comp sci degree. They have an information technology degree, right? There's opportunity there that isn't being captured.
Yeah, and I think that point kind of hits on this slide that we're covering now, is that not over prescribing it, right? Not over prescribing, hey, this person absolutely has to have a computer science degree to be hired, even though
Right.
they have the right behaviors and attributes. One of the things that looks like you've done with the talent scouting effort is you haven't over prescribed and over dictated or over engineered what it needs to look like. I think sometimes people want all the I's dotted and the T's crossed and all the steps to be perfectly engineered. And sometimes you just have to let it evolve based on the market.
Right. Yeah, you do. I mean, from a talent perspective, I mean, you can be very prescriptive in terms of the type of talent that you want to build in terms of that pipeline, right? In terms of the program, there's a lot of ways to to actually get there. I think the best way is having a semi-programmatic rhythm to it, right? So making sure you have a rhythm with the leader, a constant sync, you making sure that they understand that they need to provide feedback, they understand the type of coaching they need. When you get really good at this program, the key is leveraging your ATS system, leveraging your engagement stages to allow you to have geo intelligence. So now, where we're at and where we're trying to really capitalize on, when our leaders can travel again, when they're traveling, we set meetings up for them, right? We understand, okay, who do we have at the like stage in Chicago that we need to have more intel on, more calibration, to get a leader to actually, figure out if we should be pursuing them to try to get the trust, right? So we can figure that out. Oh, you're going to Chicago, then you're going to London. Okay, who do we have across the globe in the no stage? Or who's in trust that we just need to keep warm and have them meet with somebody else, right? So we call that geo intelligence around the talent scouting. And that's one of the things we're trying to perfect today. Because what we were up against leaders would ping us and they say, hey, I'm going to the Bay Area in 2 weeks. Who do you have people for me to meet with? And we'd be scrambling. We have a buttload of people, but we couldn't think of people, right? It's like, crap, too late. I should have thought about this person, right? And so now our database is codified to where we can actually pull it up by geo and by engagement stage really quickly to get to that meeting list that they need to have.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point that you make there, and just knowing that talent so that you could actually say, hey, here's somebody you need to look out for. Wouldn't it be amazing if the leader already knew who that talent was because they had been engaged with them at whatever venue was there? Or
it happens, man, with our external succession planning. I mean, so like, this is the thing. Everybody talks about succession planning, internal. This is the funniest thing. Internal succession plans, usually the people that are on the plans, they have no clue that they're on the plans. What if they actually knew they were on the plans? How would that drive retention, right? I mean, that would be a huge retention piece to know that if this person leaves or they win the lotto or they're hit by a bus, I'm the next person up, right? But we don't tell them that half the time. We keep it under wraps, and then next thing you know, crap, they left to another job. and we have no internal person now. And so on the external piece, we don't really mess with the internal. That's talent management. We know about it because we have to know where the hot areas are, where we need to shore it up from an external perspective. But the thing about the key thing is that it can't just be a list of names. It has to be real. So whether it's Chris Capicella, the CMO, or whether it's, Kate Johnson, the president of MS US Sales, they understand who is on their external succession plan, and they meet with them on a regular basis, right? So that's the key. Every year we have what's called talent talks, and we have to establish action plans around these external succession plans, and the goal to continue to meet with them. So that's something that we do. The aspiration is to have every corporate vice president engaged with their external succession plan. I don't think we're quite there yet. We have a lot of work to do. That's what I'm driving my team to do. But that is, we're going in that direction.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. Another thing that you want to do in recruiting, building this recruiting culture, is build a distributed and digitally enabled workplace, right? Do people have multiple channels to communicate both internally and externally, and to be able to share information, and to be able to collaborate, and to be able to talk about what their career looks like, how you get work done, how you solve problems. You don't want to be locked in. The current situation has forced companies to kind of cross the chasm and get better at using the distributed workplace, and it's not going to go back to the way it was. So the companies that embrace that digital workplace, and they foster that digital workplace, and they can communicate not only hiring but also career opportunities, both internally and externally, will be in a competitive position for the positive. I think another thing with the recruiting culture, a lot of times companies they pay for employee referrals. They pay for individual achievement, which is, there is a merit-based system where you're going to measure people against performance. Some of the things you want to align, especially in the recruiting culture, is align some of those awards to the overall company success with talent, not just
Absolutely.
an individual achievement. What are some of your thoughts around that?
Yeah, Cody, I think it's the same. I mean, like the biggest controversial topic is putting D&I commitments and tie that to performance review, right? I think the same would be kind of with recruiting too, because we have a lot of leaders at some point will get down back to, they want to push recruiting off as a service that is there to serve them, right? When no, it's actually a partnership, and I think that's one of those things where how do we think about the talent commitment? Most leaders typically have a talent commitment, but does it actually extend to a recruiting commitment, a commitment of actually updating your LinkedIn profile and being out there, a commitment to actually, meeting with talent, any opportunity you can, or at conferences or whatever it may be. It's sporadic behavior today, and it's not concrete inside of reviews. I think it is definitely an opportunity, but I don't know if you're going to get it widely adopted in most companies, right? I think it's an opportunity though. So
it's baby steps, right?